Today, I am turning plain die cuts into a vibrant field of wildflowers using simple ink blending techniques. I'll be using white cardstock, some floral dyes, and a few of my favorite inks to build depth, color, and dimension all by hand. Now, the products I'm going to be using today are from the Simon Says Stamp Friend Like You release, and it includes the Tilted Daisies, Arctic Poppies, and Delicate Wildflowers. But of course, you could do this with anything you have in your stash. Off screen, I did all of my die cutting and I kept them separated in the Spellbinders craft stacks. It's all using Hammermill cardstock. And now I'm going to start adding color to my flowers. So the first one I'm doing here is the Arctic Poppies, which is probably one of my favorites out of the release. Now, when you die cut it, you're going to get the base piece with the flower and the stem attached, and then you're also going to get another piece that's going to overlap. So I die cut an extra of the base pieces with the leaves and then trimmed the stem off, and you'll see why in just a moment. To color my stems, I'm going to be using the brand new trio that was just released, and I'm using eucalyptus. Now, this is just for the stems, and I'm using a small blending brush on it. And I clean up my mat in between switching colors. Now, for the base piece of the flowers that I had trimmed off of the stem, I'm applying bubblegum ink using a detail blending brush from Gina K Designs. Going to that smaller blending brush is going to allow me to control my ink a little bit more because I want to leave kind of a little highlight at the edge of the petals. That's the main reason that I start with white cardstock is because I really like to have that white edge to kind of give it that highlight and then building up the contrast with my colors. Now I'm using the new craft glue to attach that smaller petal over the front of the base petal. And this is just, it's so simple and so delicate, which is one of the reasons I really love it. And then I take that piece and I attach it to the base. Now, the reason I kind of separated those is that way I don't risk getting any of the green ink on my pink flower. Now I'm going to move on to the tilted daisies. So there is going to be two pieces to each daisy, and there's two daisies. I am adding a little bit of seafoam ink starting in the center and working my way out. It looks a little funny at first, but once all of the colors are kind of put together, it is a nice way to add a little bit of color to the daisies with it without leaving it so stark white. And then I added stardust for the centers. I wanted a color that was a little bit more of a dusty yellow for those centers. Now, that color did come from Concord and Ninth, so it's nice to have a good variety of colors in your stash. I'm adding these centers to the actual daisy, and then I can add this to the stems just by adding a little dot of liquid glue. This stem that has the leaves on it, I think came from a different die set. I think it came from the Wildflowers. I just really like the leaves on it, so I used it for one of my daisies. And then attaching the other one, that one kind of has these stems where I don't want to say they're cut off, but there's no leaves there. And this is the Delicate Wildflowers. I am just adding a little bit of heather ink starting in the center, blending out again towards the edge, but leaving that white highlight. And I'm honestly not sure how these are supposed to layer together. I didn't keep them separate like that. So I just added a dot of glue and did the best I could. And then I came in, added the centers to the wildflowers, and then added them to their stems, which I also did ink blending using that same trio of ink. For the background, I am using this Holiday Horizons stencil. It has some mountains, some trees on here. And what I was envisioning is that I would have these wildflowers growing in the front of this mountain scene. And originally, I intended to use the trees, which is why I pulled this particular stencil out. I decided afterwards not to add the trees at the bottom and just leave it green. So I slid my cardstock into the area of the mountains and I'm ink blending that with a large blending brush and flannel ink, but I only went about halfway down. I'm going to come in with celery ink, starting at the other side, which is technically the bottom, and blending up towards that gray. I don't do a ton of overlapping there because I didn't want it to get muddy. And then I'm going to go to the top. Now, with the stencil, you can mask off your mountains. So I have that masked off, and I came in with marine at the top. So that's going to be my sky. Going into this project, I knew that I wanted to use the arches die to frame my design. So I lined that up centered on white cardstock and ran that through my intricate die cut machine to create that frame. And originally, I was going to do a double frame, and then in the end decided to go with the smaller one. But for right now, I was still thinking double frame. I started with the daisies. They're the biggest ones, and I knew that the smaller ones were going to end up going in the front because if I would have put the daisies in the front, you wouldn't see the smaller ones. So, hence why my daisies are in the background first. And then I'm using my frame as a guide to attach the rest of the flowers. So I'm really trying to fill in that bottom area of my scene. I have a hint of green showing in the background. You can see my mountains there, but it's not overpowering. You're really drawn in to the wildflowers that are in the front. I finished gluing my flowers with the liquid glue and now I'm going to stamp my sentiment. This is using the Smile bundle from Simon Says Stamp. I used this in a previous project. I will link that up above in the corner somewhere along the line here in the video. But I love this stamp set. It has some really great sentiments in here. I love the font of the word smile. So I'm die cutting all of that out with the coordinating die and then using the sentiment label die to trim out the smaller sentiment. I'm going to do a bunch of die cutting and stacking of my sentiment a little later on, but I didn't show that in camera. I'm going to add some foam tape behind my arch frame. That's the Alt New foam tape. It's their original one that they had. Remove the backing of that and place that over my scene so it is popped up from my wildflower scene. And even though I did stack my sentiment, so there's about two other pieces of cardstock behind the sentiment, I still needed to add a little bit of foam tape behind it to get it to be a little bit higher than the frame itself. So I did that with the word your smile and also the smaller sentiment that says it brings so much joy. So I love starting with the white cardstock so I can leave all of those highlight areas in there and ink blending on my die cuts to create this beautiful wildflower scene in the front of the mountains. I will have all of the supplies that I'm using today linked down below in the video description and over on my blog. If you found this video and card project inspiring, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Here is another video that I think you might enjoy.